What would happen if Luffy was a Marine? The Marines is the organization that stands against pirates, and the biggest obstacle is stopping our boy from becoming the king of the pirates. From the very beginning, we've known that Luffy's dream is freedom, but his sexy grandpa Garp always wanted him to become a Marine. However, that dream from Garp was crushed the moment that Luffy admired Shanks and decided to be like him. But what if he actually became a Marine? And what would happen to the Straw Hats? What if Luffy never admired Shanks? This is the one RD. Let's begin. We won't take Luffy's powers, so he will still meet Shanks and eat the Gum Gum fruit. However, this time, Shanks is not sacrificing his arm. Instead, someone else is going to inspire Luffy. After Luffy eats the Gum Gum fruit, Garp takes Luffy to the Dank's house. But in this story, Luffy sees Garp as a hero. He listens to Garp Marine stories and dreams about being the best Marine ever. Also, one day, Garp will take him to meet Aokiji, whose calm style and mindset would inspire Luffy even more every single day. One day, Luffy will be kidnapped by the mountain bandits, and Aokiji and his grandpa would arrive, saving the kid from certain death. This would make Luffy want to be like them even more. This is a what if, so it's going to be the same but different. Luffy's going to grow up with Ace and Sabo, and they're going to live the same experiences. Now, as the original story, they're going to think that Sabo is dead and promise to set out to sea once they're 17. When the time comes, Luffy set out on his tiny boat, ends up trapped in a barrel, fights Alabasta, and meets Kobe, who shares his dream. They head to a marine base to enlist. There, Luffy meets Zoro and witnesses the corruption within the Marines. He saves Zoro from execution and defeats Morgan. With his usual confidence, Luffy says he wants to join the Marines, and Zoro agrees, aiming to change the system from the inside. The Marines appreciate their help, but can't officially accept them after they attack a superior officer. That's the moment when Garp steps in, taking Luffy, Zoro, and Kobe under his care. Zoro's gonna stay with Luffy, thinking about being the best swordsman ever. Now, under Aokiji's training, Luffy learns to master his devil fruit and the way that his grandpa fights. In this story, they never meet Usopp. He might even die fighting Kuro, who succeeds in his plan. Nami stays trapped under Arlong's rule until Dragon arrives on that island and frees her and the villagers from Arlong's abuse. Luffy, Garp, and his new allies travel to the Barati, where they meet Sanji. They defeat Don Krieg, capture him, and Luffy recruits Sanji, who tells him about his dream of fighting the All Blue. Luffy knows that one day he'll have his own ship and his own trusted officers. Zoro meets Mihawk and swears to surpass him one day, fulfilling both his and Queen's dream. From there, Luffy and his crew travel across the East Blue, defeating pirates and rising through the Marines' ranks. In Locktown, Luffy meets Smoker, forming a kind of friendship similar to the one that he has with Law in the main story. Entering the Grand Line, Luffy meets Crocus, who already knows Garp from his rivalry with Roger. Crocus doesn't reveal anything about the One Piece, but they still meet Laboon and make the same promise. Next, they head to Alabasta to investigate what's going on in the kingdom. On their way, they stop at Drone Island because Garp hears Ace was seen there. Here, the villagers welcome them as heroes, but they cannot touch Wapol, who is protected by the world government. However, Luffy gets angry, wanting to punch him, but Garp stops him. Even as Marine, Luffy's spirit hasn't changed. That's when Chopper joins their unit, mostly because how unique he is. As they reach Alabasta, they find Vivi exhausted in the desert. Garp recognizes her and she explains what's happening, but they can act because Crocodile is a Shishibukai. Crocodile secretly kills King Cobra and becomes the king of Alabasta. Vivi stays behind seeking revenge. Luffy promises her that one day he'll abolish the Shishibukai system and return, the way Fujitora is doing it in the main story. During the mission, he meets his brother Ace, who gives him his beaver card so they can find each other again. Later, Crocodile and Robin reach the Poneglyph. Robin hides the truth and Crocodile leaves her for dead, but she survives somehow. Meanwhile, Dragon investigates Alabasta after hearing about Robin and the remnants of Ohara, hoping to recruit her into the the Revolutionary Army. Afterward, they reach Water 7, where Frankie is captured by CP9. Brook remains in Thriller Bar, still searching for his shadow, and failing. In this case, Blackbeard meets Gecko Moria, and kills him to steal his Ishibukai position. Ace fights Blackbeard, just like in the original story, but loses and is captured, fulfilling Blackbeard's goal and securing his title. Jinbe remains in prison since Luffy never intervened. When Luffy knows about Ace's execution, he's desperate to save him, but Zoro stops him, reminding him that Ace has his own way. Luffy breaks down, just like Garp at Marineford, unable to act. Ace is about to be executed when someone unleashes Conqueror's Haki. Everyone is shocked it's Dragon's son, but Akainu himself steps forward and executes Ace right in front of him. Garp tries to attack Akainu, but Sengoku stops him. Luffy also tries, but Aokiji freezes him partially and tells him he must think about his purpose. Realizing he's too weak, Luffy collapses in tears, half frozen, while Chopper desperately treats him. Kobe cries and begs for the war to stop, and just like in the real story, Shanks arrives with his sword raised, ending the conflict. When Luffy wakes up, Aokiji motivates him to train and become stronger, to one day capture every pirate out there. Luffy develops an even deeper resentment for Akainu. He's then invited to join Sword. Later they travel to Sabari because Garp heard rumors about the Dark King. There Luffy meets Rayleigh, who's now retired. Rayleigh immediately connects with him and says Shanks spoke about him. He convinces Luffy to seek the One Piece, as it will be vital for the new era. Jiraiya Handsome Rayleigh believes Luffy will be the face of this generation. Luffy sees the supernovas and the celestial dragon. Garp explains why he never became an admiral because he'd have to obey people like them. When Luffy sees Charlos's disgusting behavior, he's ready to punch him, but everyone stops him before he does something stupid. That's when Luffy forms a new goal, separating the Marines from the world government. He understands he must become even stronger to protect the people he loves. Then comes the time skip. 2 years later, Luffy reunites with Mugiwara no Shanks, and I say Mugiwara no Shanks because Shanks never gave Luffy his hat in this timeline. Shanks explains everything about the One Piece, its power, and the Gorosei. Together they decide to search for Laugh Tale. Luffy becomes an important part of Sword, but eventually joins Shanks' crew just like ex-Drake joined Kaido's. But in this case, Luffy becomes truly close to the red-haired pirate, training harder than ever. Eventually he becomes the strongest. He defeats Blackbeard, reforms the Marines, and becomes Fleet Admiral, gaining freedom in his own way. He finds the One Piece, revolutionizes the world, and destroys the world government. Subscribe.